bienvenidos a esta tertulia sobre un tema muy importante como es la migración y que tiene junto temas conexos como los derechos humanos, como perspectivas históricas, sociológicas y sobre todo lo que está pasando desde hace tiempo en la frontera entre Estados Unidos y México. Tenemos un panel verdaderamente de lujo en esta ocasión y quisiera darles a todos la bienvenida y pedirles que cada quien haga una pequeña presentación y empecemos el diálogo.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you also, Hector, Benjamin, for the possibility to be with you, with all my partners. I have to say that I am a full-time professor researcher at the Centro de Relaciones Internacionales of the Faculty of Political and Social Science of UNAM. And also I am invited teacher at Instituto Tecnológico de Estudios Superiores Monterrey in Puebla, and also professor at the Master of Migration Studies at Universidad Iberoamericana in Santa Fe, Mexico City. I also study principally international migrations policies in North America, European Union, Mercosur, and also Africa. In this case, I also try to have at least one course a year about migration in my faculty, in Facultad de Ciencias Políticas y Sociales. Thank you also, I repeat, for the opportunity to be with all of you.
Thank you, Tomas. I guess I'll introduce myself. So some of you, actually, I think all of you know me except for Doctora Núñez. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Luis Jimenez. I work at UMass Boston. I've written on the US-Mexico border, and I'm very interested in that. But right now, actually, I'm working on Latinos in Massachusetts. We're writing a book about Latinos in Massachusetts and just the dynamic that's happening. And one thing that is going to be different that I had not thought about and I had not considered before when the project began was COVID-19. COVID-19 is having a serious impact in the Latino community in Massachusetts. And I think we're going to have a whole section on just that and just how much worse they're getting impacted. Obviously, the pandemic has had or has made clear the problems and the deficiencies and the inequalities across the world of different social groups, and obviously Latinos are one of them in Massachusetts. So that's what I'm working on. In terms of the university, I teach about migration politics and Latin American politics and U.S.-Latin American relations. So thank you.
It is an honor to be with all of you, with Benjamin Juarez, Hector Zavala, Milton, my colleague Tomas Milton, and of course, Professor Luis Jimenez. I am Silvia Núñez Garcia. I am a full-time professor and researcher at the Center of Research for North America at UNAM in Mexico City. I was participating as the director of this institution between the years 2009 until 2017. I have been doing US-Mexico studies, paying special attention to social inequality, migration trends, empowerment processes, and building a social capital in North America since I began doing my research at UNAM, and I have the privilege of being a member of the board of the Mexico Institute from the Woodrow Wilson Center at Washington, D.C. And it is truly an excellent and an honor to have an opportunity to interact with all of you, which, by the way, are all men. I'm the only woman invited to this conversation. That matters quite a lot in my case. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Silvia. And it's really a privilege to have such distinguished members from both institutions, the National University of Mexico and UMass Boston. It seems that the idea of the
cosmopolitan when they asked one of the earliest philosophers, the teacher of one of the great fighters and warriors in history, where are you from? And he responded, I'm from the world. I'm cosmopolitan. That the idea of being part of the world is in direct opposition to the idea of the new nationalism that we see surging in Europe, in Turkey, in parts of Latin America, and in the United States. So I would like, Thomas, for you to tell us a little bit about your experiences working also not only in research, but you have a pulse teaching at UNAM, teaching at Ibero, teaching at Tech, of how different students from different levels of Mexican society have a feeling about this conflict of being nationalist and focus on our nation, whichever that may be. And again, a nation is a cultural construct, and the idea that, according to some philosophers, the wonderful idea of a cosmopolitan world seems to have faded. And if you would like to pose the first question for the rest of the group.
Thank you, Benjamin. I have observed contradictions between my students. Some of them really feels nationalism, and others really don't care about nationalism. Why? Really, I don't know. I have to say this is really different, as you know, to teach in at UNAM or teaching in some place different, like Ibero. Is really different. There are different contexts. There are obviously different people with different status economics. And I have to say that in this moment, maybe we are seeing a change in the status of what we think about what is world. And in this case, I have to say that maybe we are seeing a lot of problems with identities. I have to remark, sometimes I can see, for example, true nationalism, and also I have to repeat, people who really don't care where they came from. They really feels like cosmopolitan people. That's what I think about my experience in this case. I would like to talk about what is going on in this moment with Trump's policies about migration, about refugees, about asylum, and also what's happening now with the Trump's irresponsibilities about human beings. I would like to talk about this.
Yes, I believe you started by placing a very provocative question in current times, talking about nationalism vis-a-vis the support of globalization, which I would like to say something in that regard. I think that there is a need for doing more research regarding the crossings between social class and social mobility, and how these kind of issues have an impact in defining people if they see themselves as nationalists or basically globalists. I think that the new generations, if they are highly educated, are quite familiar with what globalization means, because they have been beneficiaries of globalization, and the less opportunities one person has, it's more possible that this person can be manipulated by nationalists and populists politicians. So I think that talking about migration in the framework of both nationalism vis-a-vis globalization is exactly what we would like to address in this conversation in order to stimulate what the young generation that has to say regarding this matter. And I agree completely on what Thomas Milton has mentioned. Especially, we would also need to address and what is happening to the framing of the public opinion in Mexico and the United States regarding precisely the case of migration. Because even in Mexico, which used to be a country that in terms of public opinion, we were kind of an open society supporting human mobility, which I prefer to use this category, human mobility, than migration, because of the misuse of the concept of migrants in current times. But nowadays, because of the situation of many refugees that didn't make it to the United States and are remaining in Mexico, we have seen the emerging of sort of xenophobic or at least discriminatory attitudes regarding these newcomers who were not invited to Mexico. So this is truly one of the most important issues to discuss when we try to defend our migrants in the United States. We also need to pay attention to what we are doing to others in our own territory.
That's a great point. And again, we tend to forget that in the early 20th century, Chinese migrants in Mexico were massacred in Torreon and other parts. And Chinese migrants built the railroads for the USA and for Mexico. But Luis, from Boston and across the river, we have a distinguished colleague at Harvard, Martin Nussbaum, who has talked about what kind of globalization and the failure of the cosmopolitan ideals. But again, teaching at UMass Boston, that is not Harvard, you can have a sense of the diversity and sometimes the forced identity that we receive there, and we stop being Mexicans or Poblanos or Ecuatorianos, and we become Latin or Latinx or Hispanics.
Right. That's a wonderful point. I really like actually your opening, like Doctora Núñez was talking about, the idea of the cosmopolitan. And I mean, I think right now we're basically at a crossroads. We're at a point very similar, I think, to where we were at the beginning of World War I, which is there's this moment of globalization that then leads to catastrophe, war, economic depression, and so on. In this case, I think we could very well be in a situation where we could follow in that, or if you take the optimistic view, which I do, I think, I hope anyway, that we would follow a more liberal kind of cosmopolitan, liberal in the sense of opening up to the world. But this idea of nationalisms, I mean, I think Doctora Núñez rightly points out that nationalism is coming back, even in places like in Mexico, which used to be, I mean, Mexico is very nationalistic, but at least in terms of human mobility, you know, people, we used to be pretty open to that idea. Mexicans used to be pretty open to the idea. But in Boston, I think specifically in UMass Boston, we experience this a little differently because of the kind of people, the kind of students that we have, as opposed to, you know, Harvard or Boston University or Boston College. But there is at least, I think, an idea or a sense of wanting to belong to something greater than used to be, perhaps. And this is changing because we are connected in so many different ways, because globalization is changing our perception of the planet. But as Doctora Nunez points out, this has a lot to do with your privilege. It has a lot to do with your education. It has a lot to do with the kinds of access of things that you're even aware are out there. And so for some people, which do not have that access, for them, it's a rejection, and they do want to, I guess nationalism provides a sense of safety, perhaps, that they think misunderstand, but at least for some people, it feels that way. So.
Yeah, that's a great comments, Luis. I was thinking when you were saying about the openness of Mexican people, and again, looking at the women that perhaps represent in the general world idea what Mexico is about. We have Frida Kahlo, that is half German, and we have Salma Hayek, that is Lebanese, and yet both are 100% Mexican.
Right.
And you can even have Salma Hayek playing Frida in the movies. Luis, would you like to put a question forward for Thomas and Dr. Nunez?
Let's talk a little bit about Trump. I can start if you'd like, because Thomas posted the question, and I would love to hear what Doctora Nunez has to say as well. And I don't mean to talk about Trump himself, because that's pretty boring, but I mean about his policies. So, I mean, we know that he has been from the very beginning. He began his campaign with the Mexicans are rapists thing, and from the very moment he started in office, he did the so-called Muslim ban. He has always been that's the one thing where he has been pretty consistent. But in the last few months, at least as far as I can tell, it's hard to tell actually, because some of this data is not clear, or CBP or others make different comments or different claims. It seems as though asylum is zero right now. It doesn't seem like there's any kind of claims that are being adjudicated right now. Refugees are also at zero right now. There's no refugee intaking anything. But it's not clear in terms of visas. Those seem to be delayed. And so in any case, for all intents and purposes, right at the moment, it seems that the United States is as close to zero it probably will be, or it could be rather, in the minds of, or in terms of policies. So the question is that I'm worried about, and I wonder what you guys think, what Tomas and Doctora Nunez think, is whether you think this is going to be a permanent thing, at least if Trump gets reelected. Obviously, if Trump doesn't get reelected, we'll see some changes. But do you see this as a beginning of something that might become more permanent?
Dr. Nunez, I mean, there you are positioned with your work at the Woodrow Wilson Center at the heart of the discussions that I've been following, and it's a great space because if you can tell us a little bit about the Institute, some people find that it's too much to the right, and some people find that it's too much to the left, which I think is great because it's a space of great conversations.
So let me address both things, Benjamin, because you are asking me about the job of the Mexico Institute at the Woodrow Wilson, right? And what the people such as me are doing in that incredible space, which is a very challenging one. And the other issue is related to something that I would like to say regarding current times and what is going on not only in America but in the whole world regarding what's going to happen to all these refugee claimants and migrants, which is in the whole world. Each country is making different decisions regarding what to do with all the incoming people from the world, either if they are tourists or if they are standing in line because they have already been processing their applications to become permanent residents, let's say in America or in a country in Europe, or what is going on to people that is confronting violence and have an emergency and need to run away from their country. So it's not possible to address the issue in general terms. We need to place specific attention to each case, to see what is going on in Germany, what is going on in America, and what is also happening in Mexico. So it is very hard to make a generalization, and I believe we still need to wait to see how this situation evolves, especially, for example, what is going to happen to Chinese students that were submitting applications to come to the United States and study, which I have been listening to quite interesting conversations within the Woodrow Wilson in this regard. What's going to happen to Chinese students coming to the United States because of this pandemic, but also because of this scenario, which I think it's a little bit like, it resembles me the Cold War. Maybe we are not, we are in the threshold of a sort of a new Cold War between the United States and China. So let me go back to the first issue. I was invited as a member of the Mexico Institute because when I was very, very young, many years ago, I had the privilege to become a Woodrow Wilson Fellow. They invited me to do research that I was passionate to do in America, which is extreme poverty and homelessness in America. And I got the support of the Woodrow Wilson Center to do that, especially in Washington, D.C., which we all know that beyond being the capital of the United States, the population of homeless people there is it has big numbers. So that was a very excellent opportunity. And then I became a researcher at UNAM. Before that, I was at CIDE, and I kept doing some work with them, and I was invited as a member of the board. The components of the board are not only people from academia, but also people from the policy making, and also CEOs from big business that have common interests in Mexico and the United States. So we are always discussing basically the policy-making process in both countries that have an impact on US-Mexico relations. However, although there are a few number of women participating, I have to say that as politics in Mexico and the United States, it is still so masculine driven, and this is one of the of my struggles when I participate there, and also when I try to express the experience of working in an amazing place like UNAM. You know that UNAM is very diverse. It's open to all students from very poor students that made it to the university because we have a public institution that it's for free, but also students that come from the upper classes and the middle classes. So it is truly a mirror of what Mexican society is. And this is one of the interesting things that maybe I incorporate to the conversation there that I have a much more open perspective regarding many problems, especially, for example, when we talk about who are the best and the brightest. Because I know that in Boston, most of the students in all the universities consider themselves the best and the brightest. And I have the honor to work in a university of also where you can find the best and the brightest, but people with a lot of sensitivity regarding what inclusion and social mobility matters in each country.
Very well said. And also an institution that is 80 years older than Harvard, although many people at Harvard don't know that. But Silvia, I would like you to talk a little bit more about Luis' question regarding the re-election or not of Trump. And you were mentioning your experience in Washington, D.C. Well, Washington, D.C. has 47 plus African American population. And we can see that even now with the COVID, the percentage of victims that are Latinx or African American are a great percentage. We can see in Marxist theory that capitalism is blamed for exploiting the work of people. So are we coming now to an election that will define the future of capitalism? What are your perspectives as a scholar and from Mexico of what could change in case that Trump is not elected or in case that he's elected for a second term?
Unfortunately, I cannot see a different system beyond capitalism that could pave the way for a brighter future. What I have realized and what I support is that the building of social democracies within a system that it can be called capitalism, but that has rules of engagement that are devoted to create equilibriums. Let us identify that highly developed nations in the Western Hemisphere made it to this highly developed stage because they were able to consolidate the middle classes. So this is exactly the key point of inflection. All those societies who have been doing better and who have been, in the case of the Nordic countries, made it to the top levels of development, are still working on their capitalism rules. They are in favor of trade. They are in favor of their young population to have a good education, to move around the world, but they are also welcoming people from many countries to work in their countries and move to their countries. It is because when we build equilibriums, the world is much better. So this is exactly what I think that even China is trying to do, building a stronger middle class society with the state capitalism, but they are not getting rid of capitalism. So I don't like to talk more about if capitalism is going to disappear or not. I don't think so. I think that we need to struggle in order to find new rules of engagement globally to create wider equilibriums. And of course, people such as Donald Trump is not fond of these ideas because a certain group of the elites are still favoring for monopolizing the capital investments. They monopolize wealth, and so they are not willing to share, to have a different social contract globally that would promote benefits for others. Trump, I think that Trump is not going to win. I have to also mention that I have been a political observer in already 4 elections in the United States. And I was mentioning the other day to my students that I have realized that America has been confronting 3 thresholds in terms of elections that are truly having an impact in the future. The first election was when Barack Obama won the presidency. We had for the first time an African American making it to the White House, and this is absolutely irrelevant. We cannot forget that this has already happened. So this is a huge change within democracy and within a capitalist country. It is possible to have radical changes. And then,
wonderful.
And then the second watershed has been the reaction of a specific sector of the US society against that presidency and the openness Obama was trying to promote globally. We had a second particular election, which is the reaction, Donald Trump. That is the second. And it is already making history. But we need to be very cautious. Not in this regard, what is going on during the Trump presidency. There are many lessons we need to learn regarding the meaning of the Trump's presidency in the world. The meaning, one of that is that there were no equilibriums, and that America and Americans, if they decide, they have the right not to provide for the rest of the world, or they are going to provide in a more proportional way with other countries. They are not the guardians. There are many studies that were opposing the influence of America, and by going backwards, we do not have that huge influence of America that many countries were rejecting. So what is happening? We have a president that is one of a kind, but there are so many lessons we need to learn. One is that it is because of Donald Trump that women all over the world began to organize themselves and began to execute and promote actions against all these masculine attitudes against women all over the world. And this is a huge change and a positive trend. And now the third part, and a decisive one in terms of history for America, is this election. What is going to happen if Donald Trump or Biden wins? Both of them are men, unfortunately. We women needed to understand that it has not come the time for women in America. But there are precious women in New Zealand and in Germany. And these two are top leaders globally. So this election is still going to be a new watershed for the humanity. And well, the ones who are going to be players in this election, unfortunately, they are only the American people, and they are the ones who are going to decide who is it that they have they need to place their trust in someone. And unfortunately, not all the people that make it to politics, to high politics, are true leaders.
Silvia, would you like to pose a question? I would like, if you could ask a question to Thomas Milton, because he has been quiet for a long time now, and we would like to pick his brain.
Tomás is an expert in terms of what is happening to people from the caravans between Mexico and the United States. And I would like to hear what he has to say regarding the current situation of COVID in Mexico and what is happening to all these people, and what are the expectation he has regarding an agreement between Mexico and the United States in order to provide for better conditions for all these people that are stuck in the middle and have no ways to have a decent living.
Thank you, Doctora. As you know, the caravans in this moment are stopped. However, in the next months, maybe we will see again more caravans. And I think that it's impossible that Mexico and United States could have, I am talking about, obviously, about governments. I don't think that Mexico and USA could have an agreement to trade this mobility in our region. I think that USA, in this case with Donald Trump, I know Luis Jimenez is boring to talk about Donald Trump. However, we as Mexican state will following what he is telling us to do. In this moment, we have really big problems because, as you know, in USA, they are capturing Mexican people also. They are sending us these people, and many of them, they have the COVID, for example. And this is really important. We have to say that in this moment, Mexico has a lot of problems because we don't have money from Trump's presidency. And we have now more than 60,000 people living in our country in cities that are dangerous because they are waiting now for their process to get asylum in the United States. This is the reality that we are confronting now, and I don't see any possibility to have a trade or something like, let me say this in Spanish, un acuerdo real. Why? Because there are no possibilities, and also, as you know, in Mexico, we have a president that is still a candidate. I don't know why he is president. And he said a few days ago that he is going to propose Donald Trump a new agreement about migration. This is really not going to happen. We know this is only electoral politics, and the real problem, and also I would like to ask in a few moments, if you let me, to Luis Jimenez, what's going on with all these cities, Mexican cities like Tijuana, like Mexicali, that they are having a lot of these asylum seekers, and they don't have money, they don't have possibilities to give all these people security, health, and also food. This is what we are watching in this moment. A lot of problems to Mexico, and in the other side, Donald Trump is really making his promise true. For example, we are going to stop migration. We don't want more refugee asylum seekers. This is what we are living now. And this is why I would like to ask, if you let me, to Luis, what's going on with all these Mexican cities where also we have a lot of problems, for example, with security.